Well, it turned out to be a beautiful afternoon to come out to the Blue Dat Festival here with progressive North Shore Democrats. And let me just get straight to the point. I'm John Bel Edwards, I'm a Democrat, and I'm running for governor. You know, I happen to believe that Louisiana deserves a governor who gets up every day and worries first and foremost about the people that he governs, or that she governs, but I just happen to be a he. For too long, we've had a governor who worries about anything but. He travels the country promoting himself, his selfish political ambition. He pursues his political party agenda, his philosophical agenda. He promotes out-of-state corporations, Wall Street banks, and D.C. politics. And all of that has been bad for the people of Louisiana. He's a governor who believes that if you can cut it, you should cut it. If you can sell it, you should sell it. If you privatize it, privatize it. And what's resulted over the last 6 years is that we have dismantled the institutions in this state that people rely upon for opportunity. We have dismantled higher education. We have dismantled K through 12 education. Health care is ridiculously hard to get in this state. Mental health. You know, if you're the parent of an adolescent with mental health issues, you know what I'm talking about. And for those of you here in St. Tammany Parish, the idea that we would close down Southeast and try to privatize it in violation of a promise that was made to all those people in New Orleans when we closed their mental health facility and promised them the furthest you'll have to go to see your loved one seeking treatment is on the North Shore. Well, that's a violation of that promise right there. We can do better. And I'm going to tell you, it's Democrats in the legislature who've been fighting against this governor. And you wouldn't know it because we're in pretty tough shape. But we've actually won a lot of fights. We've told the governor, you're not going to take and destroy the pension system so that our state retirees, after working for this state with a career of public service, don't have the dignity and security that they need in retirement. And by the way, every proposal that he has ever come up with for changing the retirement system has been unconstitutional. Now, the vast majority of them we don't even pass, but the one that did supposedly get through the House, as y'all probably know, was ruled unconstitutional because it needed a 2/3 vote. Of course, we told them it needed a 2/3 vote. But the worst thing that he's done with respect to our public sector employees is this war that he's declared on our teachers. Now, let me tell you, I am married to a teacher. She's a public school teacher, teaches elementary music in Tangipahoa Parish. But more than that, I owe what I am today to my teachers, all of whom were public school teachers. I've never had a day of instruction in a private or parochial school. And I'm not against private and parochial schools. I hope they all succeed because every child in this state needs and deserves a quality education. But the business of the state has to be in preserving and strengthening public education because public has to mean something. We are in charge of public education. We should not be diverting needed resources from public schools to go to private and parochial schools, especially if you don't know anything about those private and parochial schools in terms of the curriculum, the quality of their teachers. We don't know if they have lunchrooms and libraries or computers. We don't know if they have playgrounds, and frankly, we obviously don't care. We have schools that are teaching kids today that the earth is 6,000 years old. And to demonstrate that, they say, well, you know, dinosaurs and human beings roamed the earth at the same time. And as evidence of that, they point to the Loch Ness Monster. God, I know it's funny, but this is true. And it's sad. We have schools that are teaching kids on public dollars that this is science. And that's ridiculous. And I don't care that people believe that. I mean, that's wonderful. If they want to believe that, that's fine, but we shouldn't be teaching it as fact. And by the way, I don't understand the need to try to conflate fact and faith, because faith is supposed to be about believing that which can't be proven. So I don't know why we have this war in schools. And we also have folks being taught in these voucher schools that the KKK was a social organization that was designed to preserve morality in the South. Now, you're talking about maleducating kids, but we're paying for it. The joke is on us, and it really isn't a funny joke. We need to do better. And if we had more transparency and accountability in that system, we could make sure that our public dollars are not going to be spent in pursuit of these foolish ideas. So we can certainly do better. This idea that teachers ought to be evaluated 50% based on the scores of their students on standardized tests, when the tests are not high stakes for the students, but they are for the teachers, that's just wrong. We can do better than that. The idea that we're going to transition to a Common Core curriculum and spend 3 or 4 years to get in there, but we're not going to resource our teachers in our districts. We're not going to allow them the time that they need to make that transition in an orderly fashion. Instead, we're going to fill it up with changes to the evaluation, changes to the way that we do things in Louisiana with respect to whether they're going to have tenure and the relationship between the districts and the superintendents and all that sort of stuff. If this is the most important thing that we're going to do in Louisiana, and it is, it should have been the only thing that we've been doing in Louisiana the last 3 or 4 years, because we can't afford to get it wrong. And the one thing that I'm here to tell you today, I will not support a transition to Common Core in a way that's going to drive more public schools into the C, D, and F range, so more students will be pulled out and sent to private and parochial school with vouchers, so that we just continue to erode the support and the commitment, the resources that we are sending to public schools. I will not support that. I will lead the effort in the House of Representatives, and if I have to join Tea Party groups who are opposed to Common Core for totally different reasons, I will do that. Because we should not be diverting resources from our traditional public schools. That's a commitment that I'll make to you today. Now, we have a governor who will turn down dollars that are needed right here in the state of Louisiana to help our people, even when they're our own federal tax dollars. They've decided not to try to get $44 million to help us with pre-K education. That's disgraceful, because we don't have a very good pre-K system in this state. And it isn't like there were all these strings attached, and they can't even articulate a good reason for not doing it. But we know why they didn't do it. It's because we don't like the president. He's not like us. He's not one of us, and we're just not going to support anything he's doing, so we're going to punish our people to make a point. We turned down $80 million that was available to us to expand broadband access around the state, especially in those rural areas that are hard to serve, where the free market is never going to provide high-speed internet access. And as a result, we're going to pay a price, because we need our schools to be able to administer tests online, and they don't have the computers or the internet access to be able to do that, partly because we refused the federal dollars that then went to other states so that they got access to high-speed internet. Well, that's a disaster for the people here in Louisiana, especially the people in rural Louisiana, the poor people, many of whom I represent right now in the State House of Representatives. But probably the most immoral, disgusting rejection of federal dollars, which, by the way, are Louisiana tax dollars that we're saying we don't want coming in here, has to do with the Medicaid expansion that our governor has turned down. Now, the idea that our governor isn't concerned about the 300,000 or so working poor in this state who will not have access to health care coverage if we don't expand the Medicaid program is troublesome. Now, these are the working poor. They make too much to qualify for Medicaid, but they don't make enough to buy private insurance, or maybe they have a pre-existing condition on top of that. And so we're just going to tell them, no, you go out and fend for yourself. We're not going to do anything to help you. At the same time, we know that in just a few years, 75% of the federal dollars that come through the DISH program that we use to reimburse hospitals to provide care for the uninsured, they're going to go away. So when those dollars go away and we haven't expanded the Medicaid program, guess what? We have no way to pay for these hospitals, doctors, and clinics to render that care. And that care is not going to be available to them. But the secret is this. When the hospital closes, because it can't make ends meet, it doesn't just close for the Medicaid population. It doesn't just close for the uninsured. It closes for everybody. And clearly we're not going to let the hospitals close. In 2 or 3 years, we're going to do the Medicaid expansion. But between now and then, we're going to forfeit the 100% match rate years. The years when the federal government would pay for that cost 100 cents on the dollar. We're going to buy into it when it's more expensive to do so. That doesn't make sense. And the arguments that I'm making for doing the Medicaid expansion, they're not Democratic arguments. There are about a dozen Republican governors around the United States today who've made the same arguments, and they don't like the president. They oppose the president. They don't like Obamacare. They opposed it. But when he got reelected and the Supreme Court said it was constitutional, they at least live in the real world, and they said, you know what? It's the law of the land, and we're going to make decisions about governing our states about what's best for them, and they've decided to do the Medicaid expansion. And every one of those states has a healthier population than we have in Louisiana. They don't have the amount of poverty that we have. They don't have the amount of uninsured that we have on a per capita basis. And if it's better for them, you know damn well it's better for us. But we got a governor who just doesn't care. And he'll say, well, you know what? We don't want that many people on an entitlement program that's broken. And there's not enough flexibility in the program to design it in a way that's consistent with our values here in Louisiana. Well, I want to ask you a question. Do you know how many waivers he has requested out of Kathleen Sebelius to tailor this program in a way that he would find meritorious? 0. Now let me tell you about one that was submitted by the state of Arkansas. Arkansas decided they wanted to participate, but they wanted the dollars to come down, and they were going to buy private insurance for the people instead of just expanding the traditional Medicaid program. Well, they're doing that in Arkansas. We can't do that in Louisiana for our own people. And when we don't expand the Medicaid rolls, do you think the federal government's going to send your tax dollars back? They're going to add to your refund? They're not going to do that. Our dollars are going to go to the hospitals, doctors, and clinics in other states to provide health care to their people while we forego it here. And by the way, it would be $1.6 billion of economic activity in this state alone in 2016. Do you know how many jobs that would create? How many nurses would be hired? How many custodians, records keepers, all those things. But we're not going to do it in Louisiana because we got a governor who knows best. Well, our governor doesn't know best. He's a pretty smart guy, but his common sense is lacking, and the only thing lacking more than common sense with him is compassion. He has no compassion for the people that he serves. And if we don't do the Medicaid expansion, none of the 9 hospital privatization deals that we've undertaken in this state will work more than the first 2 or 3 years. We will not have a way to meet our obligations to those people, those entities, if we don't expand the Medicaid program. So it's the right thing to do for every reason. And you know, if you don't like the individual mandate, if you don't like the employer mandate, if you think that the overall system that's going to be imposed by Obamacare is too onerous or is too costly or it's not going to produce good enough care, rejecting the Medicaid dollars doesn't fix any of that. Well, if those things are true, we ought to fix them. But this idea that you ought to repeal it, you know, our energy would be spent so much better if our congressman would go up there and say, you know what, we don't like it. It's not something we would have done, but we're not going to be able to repeal it. But let's work together and see if we can fix it. Instead, we've got congressmen and Tea Party friends and Republican friends who love to wrap themselves in the flag, profess their patriotism, their love for this country, and they go to Washington and shut this country's government down, all to deprive people of the access of health care. That is disgusting. That is disgusting. And I'll tell you, some of you were with me in Slidell last night, and I talked about Luke chapter 10 and the Good Samaritan. And I want you to know that this morning, Senator Ted Cruz was using that very same Bible passage to support his position on the Affordable Care Act. That it was the bad Samaritan who would allow Obamacare to go into effect. Because you know that just blows my mind. And so I want to tell you this story just in case you've forgotten it. The traveler on the way from Jerusalem to Jericho was beaten savagely and robbed and left for dead. And passing by was a Levite and a priest, neither of whom stopped to render any aid, but the Samaritan came by later and did, and poured oil and wine into the wounds. Now that's not really state-of-the-art health care, but it was in his day, I guess. Bandaged him up, put him on a beast and took him to an innkeeper and paid the innkeeper to take care of him and said, if it costs more than I've given you, on my way back I'll settle up with you. Now Jesus pointed that out to demonstrate that of the 3 people who passed by, only the Samaritan was the neighbor. But the neighborly act that he provided was health care to a stranger on his own dime. Now, if that's an example that Jesus Christ himself sets for us, to use that passage to explain your opposition to trying to provide health care to people is a complete mystery to me. But he did that. I want y'all to Google it if you think I'm making it up. He used it today. So we can do better. And I know that we can do better. We can make better decisions. But by doing better, we're going to be better because we're going to be better people. We'll be more moral people. We'll be more caring people. And we'll be people who are in line with what they talk about in Matthew 25, and that is doing for the least of these. But in order to do that, we've got to make better decisions about who we elect. We've got to make sure people are registered to vote, and then when they register to vote, they've got to go out and vote. And by the way, I don't know how many of you have an election in your areas today, but today is an election day. I voted before I came here. If you haven't voted yet, do that. I don't know what's on your ballot, but I know it's always important to vote. So we can make better decisions, but we've got to make a decision to elect governors and legislators and other leaders who are going to put the people first, and that they're going to build institutions that offer people hope, offer them a better life, and offer them an opportunity. We should never try to guarantee equality of outcomes, but if we're not in the business of guaranteeing people opportunity, then we are missing the boat. And the state of Louisiana cannot succeed if we don't improve certain things here, especially with respect to education. Education is the key to unlocking the cycle of poverty, but if the education itself is too expensive, how are the people in poverty ever going to afford it? We have increased tuition at our universities by 60% since 2008. And yet our universities have $350 million less to spend to educate our kids than they did in 2008. Now, how does that make sense? Go talk to your university presidents. Go talk to your faculty members at universities. Go ask your school teachers in K through 12 how they're doing, whether they have the resources necessary to teach kids, whether they feel like they've been attacked, what their morale is like. We have got to do better in the state of Louisiana, but we can do better. We can do better by making better decisions, and I'm submitting to you that in 2015, the decision to make in order to move this forward, move this state forward and put people first again is to elect a Democrat. That Democrat should be John Bel Edwards. And I want you to know that it wasn't the day before yesterday that I started saying these things. I stood up to Bobby Jindal in committee and on the floor and in the media several years ago when he was 70%. Not when he was 35%. And all these other people who are going to want to be your next governor, they're not going to want Bobby Jindal on the stage next to him. They're not. But when it might have mattered, had they stood up and said something, they were awfully quiet, weren't they? Where was Jay Darden? John Kennedy? Well, I can tell you where Scott Angel was. Scott Angel was up there with the governor, pressuring legislators to do all these things, to steal people's pension benefits away, to attack our teachers, to send these vouchers out, and all this incredibly ridiculous stuff. And then I hate to leave on a negative note, but I'm going to share this with you because one thing that motivates people is love. And by the way, I love all of you, but I hope you will love me. But if you don't, be motivated by fear. Think about what this state would be like if we had a Governor Vitter. What a disaster. What a disaster. I'm convinced he will run. And we've got to start now so that we can achieve the grassroots support that we need to make sure that we're successful, so that when David Vitter and his millions of dollars are going to be out there opposed to us, that we can overcome that. And I want everyone here to be hopeful and encouraged. 48% of this state are still registered Democrats. Only 28% are registered Republicans. And so we can absolutely win the race. In 2011, which was a much more difficult time for Democrats, I ran the caucus election efforts in Louisiana for members of the House of Representatives. We did not lose a single seat to Republicans because we had a good message, we ran a smart, disciplined campaign, and because we told people we were going to put Louisiana first. Now, we can beat Republicans in this state, but we can't do it haphazardly, without working together, without working in a smartly, and you know, we just have to do it. But we also can't wait till 3 months before the election and think we're going to be able to get it done at that point. That's why I'm here 2 years before the election. I am here 2 years before the election to demonstrate to you how hard I'm prepared to work all the way through the election to make sure that we're victorious, because it is important. It is incredibly important. It's going to take a long time to reverse the damage that this governor has done. If we started today, he still gets 2 more years, guys. And I don't mean to scare you again, but you know what he's done to Louisiana? Well, you know, he just formed this national group called America Next. He wants to do to America what he's done in Louisiana. Can y'all imagine? So join with me and let's say, no, that's enough of that foolishness. We're going to go back to putting people first. We're going to go back to caring for our neighbors. You will never make me believe that in the state of Louisiana today that a majority of our people don't care about whether their neighbor has access to a better life, access to health care and education and things that they need. I just refuse to believe that. Now, there's a number out there. There's a number of Tea Partiers out there who really don't care, but they are not in the majority. And I want to relate to y'all a true story. This week I met with 3 different people around the state. 2 of them were in Breaux Bridge. 1 of them was in Baton Rouge. They actually changed from Republican in the last couple of weeks because they are scared. They are scared about what the Tea Party means for the future of that party and what it means for the future of our country. Now, one of those people changed all the way to Democrat. The other 2 just went to Independent. I just said, look, that's good. You know, we'll get you to be Democrat next year maybe. But that's what's happening out there. And this government shutdown is reinforcing that in a lot of people's minds. And so don't be afraid. Do not be afraid to talk to your neighbors, your coworkers, your family and friends, the people that you go to church with here in St. Tammany Parish. Because there are a lot of people over here who are terribly dissatisfied with what they're seeing in the state of Louisiana, especially school teachers and state workers and people who care about higher education. But I also want you to know that I get a tremendous reception wherever I go because of the fact that I'm a veteran. And I don't know who else is going to run that's a veteran, but you know, that helps. And I told some people last night, and this is really meant to be funny, but it's also, I think, maybe important. There were a number of years where I was jumping out of airplanes at midnight. I don't know where David Vitter was at midnight at that time. But,
I know where he was.
But the reason I tell you that is, for too long, Democrats have allowed Republicans to claim the mantle of patriotism, to claim the mantle of being godly, and we have done nothing about that. Well, that changes here. It changes today. They are not going to out-patriotic me. They're not going to out-God me. I am from Louisiana. My family has been here since 1790. Started right here in St. Tammany Parish in Madisonville. And I come from a family in Tangipahoa Parish with 4 consecutive generations have been sheriff. My brother's a sheriff over there now. My mother worked in an emergency room at Lollykemp Charity Hospital for 30 years. I've told you my wife is a school teacher. This is where I'm from. This is where I'm going to stay. This is where I want my children to stay. Now, we've got a lot of people making decisions in Louisiana today who are not from here and they're not going to stay here. Well, you know what? That has to change. We shouldn't go to New York City and find a school superintendent to run the state of Louisiana Department of Education who doesn't have the credentials to be the elementary school principal here in Abita Springs. He doesn't. But he's running all of our education for K through 12 in the state of Louisiana. So we can do better. We're going to do better, but I need your help. I need your prayers. I need your support. I think I've talked to just about all of you today and given you a card. You can go to johnbel4louisiana.com. And by the way, Bell only has 1 L. But if you misspell it, I fixed it so it's going to go the right place anyway. johnbel4louisiana.com. You can follow us on Twitter. We have a Facebook site. And I'm asking you to go on there, take a look at the video that's on there, learn about the campaign, share that information with your friends through an email online and ask them to go there and take a look at it. Because that is the most important thing we can do over the next year or so is just get our name out there, develop grassroots support. And while it's never an easy thing to do, if you go to that website, there is a way to contribute. And you can contribute online, and you can set it up where you can give as little as $5 or $10 a month on a credit card. It won't hurt you, but by the end of the next 2 years, you will have given a significant contribution to my campaign, because at the end of the day, if I don't raise about $5 million to get out our message, we can't compete with the other side. So I do need your help in every fashion. I need your prayers. I need your support. And in the meantime, if there's anything that I can do for any of you, please don't hesitate to call on me. Again, I thank you for being here, for being patient enough to listen to me. I appreciate, again, all the folks at the Progressive North Shore Democrats for putting this event on. And I thank the good Lord that it hadn't been raining on us here this afternoon. Thank y'all.